Hayes Lisbon, the eldest son of the Lisbon family, and his sister Ray. Lisbon, the eldest daughter of the Lisbon family, both lost everything they have in an ongoing war with a neighboring country followed by an economic recession. The debt left to them by their father who just passed away, their mother who went into recuperation from the shock, and on top of that, their brother who got scammed and lost all his fortune. And to make things worse, they got thrown out of the house they relied on, leaving them with nowhere to go to. While on the journey, Hayes gives Ray her word that she will live a royal life after he takes care of business, and even promises to pay back all the debt they owe. Our mother will be able to raise her chin back up again, he says. With Ray lost in her thoughts, Hayes asks if she understands. She flinches and replies, yes. Further on into the bushes, Hayes says to her, I thought this was supposed to be a distinguished family. Why do they have a manor in the middle of nowhere? I wouldn't be surprised if a farmer came out to greet us, he said sarcastically. Hayes, she scolded. I'm just being honest. Sometimes you have to say things as they are, Hayes responds, but Ray tells him not to say that in front of them. They argue for a while, leading Ray to blame him for her inability to read. As they exchange words, Hayes raises his hand, causing Ray to flinch as she thinks he was just about to hit her again because whenever she talks back at him, he either hits her or yells at her. Looking through the window, she inwardly mentions that she feels suffocated and would like to listen to the rain. As they arrive at their destination, Hayes gets into an argument with the driver because he refuses to drive them further to avoid the rain. While he's still fuming with rage, Ray suggests they head inside, or they'll get sick. But the ever-ready-to-fight Hayes swears that he'll break the driver's legs if he ever runs into him again. They walk toward the grand building, both staring at it in silence before Hayes starts banging on the gate. Despite Ray's attempt to convince him that they might be at the wrong place, he continues banging until a man comes out of the house. On sighting the man, he gets chills all over his body and quickly introduces himself as Hayes Lisbon, adding that he's here to see the master of the household. Then, he rummages through his luggage searching for the letter he's supposed to present, but the man interrupts him and says that he's never heard of the name Lisbon from his master, so he has no choice but to ask them to leave. Just at that moment, Ray brings out the letter and hands it to the man, pleading for him to give it to his grace. After a stern stare at Ray and the letter, he finally accepts it and ushers them inside. Shamelessly, Hayes orders the man to show them their rooms and get the bathtub ready, while his sister sighs. To her surprise, the man asks if she'll also need any extra clothes or bath amenities. She responds by saying that she'd like to see his grace first, while inwardly noting that the man is acting friendly now. Dressed like that? The man asks. All he can see is a rugged, filthy-looking girl. She then requests that he deliver the letter to the master first, while acknowledging the delicious aroma of food spread across the house. Just before they know it, the master takes steps down the stairs, licking his lip on sewing Ray. The man immediately introduces them and reveals that they have brought him a letter. The master opens the letter and comes across the name Elliot Wester, so Hayes begins explaining that it's their grandfather who passed away last year, and they were told that he helped this master's family years back. He further adds that their family has recently had some issues, so he and his sister are looking for a temporary place to stay. Amid his explanation, the master cuts in, telling him that his sister is pretty. He even goes so far as to ask if she's engaged. Could this be love at first sight? He doesn't stop there. He walks towards her to ask her directly. After she replies that she's not, he grins and permits them to stay as long as they like. Tense, Hayes asks the master for his name, and he reveals that his name is Cloden Cassell. A week later, Ray reminisces on the fact that the rain hasn't stopped since they arrived at the castle. She notes that the longer they stayed inside, tucked away from the sun, the worse her relationship with her brother became. She and Hayes stopped speaking, what barely seemed to be a word, and even though he was the relatively lively one, he gradually lost his energy. The manor wasn't very considerate of her brother's picky taste, and they ignored all of his requests, no matter how big or small. Hayes' complaints about the castle grew. He wasn't happy with the number of servants at first. There's Lady Mary in the kitchen, Philip, the butler who let them into the castle upon arrival, Jack, who's in charge of the barn, and the gardener who stays in the annex. Except for these 4 people, there were hardly any servants around, and not only were they unfriendly and cold, but they also treated Hayes as if he were a pile of rubbish on the streets, and he was too loud and proud to take the disrespect shown to him. Another thing Hayes complained about was the master of the house, Cloden, who was very particular. He did his best to be accommodating, but he wasn't particularly welcoming. He seemed relaxed, but there was a clear barrier between him and others. Even when they had breakfast together the first time, he warned them never to set foot on the 3rd floor. During that breakfast, Hayes made a business proposal to Cloden, which he surprisingly accepted, subject to repayment should it fail. From that moment on, Hayes got really busy. He was always out and about, while Ray ended up being the only one left in the castle most of the time, and it made her envious of him. Her brother graduated from one of the county's top schools and had many connections. He was also proud and boastful, but his lively personality drew a lot of people to him, whereas Ray always felt like she was on an island. It was always dead silent in the manor, and she could hardly ever hear the footsteps of the servants walking around, so she spent most of her days looking out the window. This didn't make her feel lonely or sad, because it was the type of silence and peace she had longed for. No moneylenders were barging into their house whenever she lit a candle. Neither was her mother incessantly asking for help from her grandparents, or her cousins talking about their family behind their backs. Everything was peaceful, without any trouble. One day, while she sits by the window, a woman walks up to her inquiring if she's cold and needs a blanket, but she declines and thanks her. However, she continues to stare at her, forcing her to ask if there's anything else she'd like to say to her. Grumbling, the woman asks her why someone like her is at a place like this. A place like this? Ray asks, confused. The woman continues to say that she's still pure and hasn't been tainted yet. She warns Ray to be careful because everyone in the manor is looking for a chance to swallow her whole. She grabs her hand, telling her that she'll lose her parents early, and her brother doesn't have a particularly bright future ahead of him either. She warns that the castle is cursed and Ray must not accept anything from the people in it, not even a cup of water. Also, she warns her not to make eye contact with anyone and not to give away her body, especially her heart. As Ray still struggles to free herself from the lady's grip, the woman asks, "Do you want to end up like me?" This time around, she reveals that the beast has his eyes on her and she shouldn't ever trust him. As this continues, the master calls out the woman's name, saying she's scaring their guest, so she immediately retreats and tells Ray to look out for herself, even the master. Confused, Ray apologizes to him for causing a scene with her presence there, but instead he questions why she's there in the first place, knowing fully well that he's on the 3rd floor. He mentions that it's nice watching her standing there all pretty, but it would be nicer if she could join him. Then he invites her over, assuring her that she won't be bored. On hearing this, she squeezes the curtain, reminding him that he told her not to come up, but he teases her instead by asking if she's trying to seduce him. Since there's nothing for her to do anyway, he stretches his hand to reach for her, inviting her up. As Ray goes upstairs to meet him, she notices the antique furniture and old works of art displayed there, as if time has stopped. They continue walking until they get to a door, and Cloden ushers her in. She muses to herself, noting that it's a secret chamber without any windows, and the room is filled with his scent. She notices the faint cigar smoke mixed with the refreshing, childlike innocence and the scent of youth. As she continues to admire the scent of the room, he asks if she likes it. Caught off guard, she quickly replies that the room is nice and very neatly put together. Just then, he holds her hand and says that he only brings things that he likes up there while handing her a book. Staring at the book, she inwardly notes that she can't tell what kind of story it is, as she can't read. But Cloden interrupts her musing and asks if she has read it before. She fidgets as she asks him if he likes storybooks, but he in return asks if she doesn't fancy the book because she's barely even looked at it. Or maybe she thinks it's childish. Little does he know that it is not the problem, and she wishes she could just tell him that she doesn't know how to read. With him standing right in front of her, she wonders if she's strange for thinking that she wishes she could just lean forward and kiss his lips. She summons the courage and leans toward him, requesting that he read the book to her with his voice, which he readily accepts with a grin. He prepares to begin reading, but the position keeps Ray wondering because she thought he'd be sitting right next to her. But here she is, sitting on his thighs with him hugging her from behind. At this point, her breathing and heartbeat are so loud that he can hear them. He brushes his hand through her hair and kisses her neck, urging her to be patient for him to read. She finally opens up about their position, feeling uncomfortable, but he asks how, and she says it's because he's behind her. However, this doesn't stop him. Instead, he tightens his grip on her body and says that he's not the one who's unable to focus on the book. All the while, Ray inwardly admits that she's not supposed to do this with him, but she can't seem to refuse him either. In fact, she finds herself wanting more. Suddenly, a voice calls out the master, informing him that Hayes has returned and wants to see him downstairs. Thinking to herself, Ray says that her brother seeing her like this should never happen. Realizing her brother's presence in the castle, she assumes he must be looking for her. But just as she's about to get up, Cloden caresses her even tighter. The messenger, still waiting for a reply from the master, asks if he should tell Hayes that he's unable to see him today, but he replies, saying that he'll be with him shortly. Ray springs up from his body, but he grabs her again, saying he'll lend her the book. But her response makes him question whether she doesn't like it. "I do. What's there not to like?" she says, still intending to hide the fact that she can't read to him. They walk out of the room, and Ray notices that it has finally stopped raining. She admires the warm weather, leading Cloden to ask if she enjoys the warm weather. She affirms, and then he asks what makes her like the warmth. She explains that if she falls asleep under the warm sunlight, it feels as if she can have a good dream. After giving her response, she throws the same question at him, but before he can answer, Hayes interrupts, yelling her name. He angrily asks why she's coming down from there, but just before she can reply, he shouts again, asking if she realizes how rude she's being. He goes on ranting about how she's going to ruin things for them if she says anything stupid that's going to get them both in trouble, but Cloden abruptly shuts him up by asking who's being rude now. Then he mentions that he was the one who called Ray over to lend her a book. A book to an illiterate fool like her? Hayes screams. These words pierce through Ray, but she still tries to maintain her composure by telling herself that it's not the first time that her brother has said this to her, and she's used to it already. As if that is not enough, he orders her to come downstairs at once and also adds that it's beyond him how she had the nerve to lie to Lord Cloden's face. This time around, his words crack her deeper, but she still tries to endure it until the master calls out her name. Shivering with tears in her eyes, she dashes off to her room and slams the door, crying bitterly. She feels sorry that she doesn't like storybooks because, to her, in the real world, there are no fairy godmothers and there is no such thing as magic, only sadness. Several days pass by, and one day there's a knock on her door. It's Lady Mary, who has brought her meal and medicine. She thanks her but notices she isn't trying to leave the room. After a moment of staring at her, Lady Mary mentions that she's been in bed for the past 3 days and asks if it's because of Master Cloden, but Ray declines, saying it's actually her fault. She hid away from his eyes because of how worthless and feeble she is, but Lady Mary assumes she must have had a rough time after all. What did she expect? Ray, obviously confused, just sits there listening, and the lady asks again if she can't tell by Master Cloden's physique. Unexpectedly, she reveals that tall men are bound to be bigger down there as well. Ray covers her mouth in shock and recalls all that happened in the secret room and realizes that she indeed felt something poking her from the back. The lady tries to explain how the master's demeanor has changed ever since his private time with Ray and urges her to understand. Seeing that Lady Mary totally misunderstands the whole event, Ray clarifies the air by saying that nothing happened between her and Lord Cloden. Lady Mary spills that there's not a single man in the world who would invest in a business that they're not interested in, and the master only did it because Hayes is her brother. With this revelation, Ray asks if Lord Cloden would kick them out if her brother's business fails, but Lady Mary assures her not to worry because the master wouldn't do that. She reveals that the master never does anything that would cost him loss. Rather, it would be the opposite, and Ray might be the one to run away. Surprised, Ray asks the lady if she isn't fond of Lord Cloden, and she replies that she's just a mere servant and that her opinions don't matter. Ray then mentions that the old lady named Della, who advised her earlier, didn't seem very fond of the master either. Lady Mary tells her that the old lady is the master's nanny, and she's the only person in the manor who can go out and about. She mumbles and adds that perhaps the old lady should consider herself lucky. On her way out, she gives Ray some advice, telling her not to be too spiteful towards Master Cloden and to just think of it as if she had finally found her person. Perhaps it could be fate. She drops a gentle reminder that she won't be able to stop by the day after tomorrow, and should make sure she stays in her room that day. What could possibly be happening on that day? On a beautiful sunny day, Ray finally steps out of her room, squeezing the book the master gave to her. The pent-up emotions she'd held back and pressed down had finally burst out, and she felt like a hibernating animal. She was stuck in bed for days with a high fever, and once the pouring sweat that pressed her body down against the sheets had lifted, she thought of Master Cloden. Strange, right? She tries locating the master's room but can't, despite asking several people in the castle. All she wants is to apologize for not telling him the truth, though she hopes she can do that before it's too late. Suddenly, she starts hearing his groaning voice from the room as if he's in pain. Then she begins banging on the door, asking if he's all right, but gets no response. She finally figures out a way to open the door and barges in, only to be met with a very disturbing scene of Lord Cloden unclad wanking. He questions her presence there, and after she reveals that she came to return his book, he just instructs her to leave it there. She tries to apologize, but she starts rambling halfway through, prompting him to send her out of his room. She leaves the room crying and wondering how he could be so cruel when he's the one who started all of this. She falls to the ground, crying bitterly, asking herself questions. What did I do so wrong? Not being able to read? That's not even my fault, she says as she sniffles. She picks herself up and dashes back to his room, yelling and crying continuously, raining several questions on him, but he abruptly cuts in by calling her name. He walks toward her and asks why she's only visiting him now. She replies that it's because she was embarrassed about borrowing his book without telling him she couldn't read. To her surprise, he sniffs her hair and tells her that he doesn't care whether she can read or not. He also acknowledges that she fooled him that day, but how does she expect him to interpret her intentions when she didn't show up the next day? He holds her closely and asks if she likes what happened between them the other day, and as soon as she affirms, he lifts her up in his arms and begins kissing her. This leads to an intimate moment despite all of Ray's efforts to stop him. He finally pauses and asks, "Ray, how are you so pretty?" She quickly recalls how often he calls her pretty, and it dawns on her that it's something that she's never heard from her own brother, not even from her parents. Meanwhile, Hayes is out of the castle, grumbling his way home with his ruined clothes caused by the rain. Apparently, he had another quarrel with a horseman over the payment he was offering. As he continues to walk home, a man approaches him and asks if he's going that way, pointing at the castle, but Hayes tries to shut him down, thinking his scheme is to beg for money. The man warns that it's dangerous over there and that no one in the village ever goes in that direction. But as always, he ignores the warning, saying that a mere farmer like him shouldn't be nosing around anyone's business. After walking past the man, he thinks to himself, his mother's illness is getting worse every day, plus he doesn't know what his business partner is doing or thinking. On top of that, all the goods that he got delivered for his business are defective. He's probably almost running out of investment money. At last, he makes it to the castle, calling for anyone who's around, but gets no response. He takes out a gift box and considers giving it to his sister before dinner, while hoping that she isn't still in her room crying. He continues to stare at the gift when Philip suddenly walks by, startling him. He requests dinner in his room, but Philip informs him that dinner is already over, and that he can make himself dinner with the leftover ingredients in the kitchen. Pissed, Hayes yells, asking if this is how rudely the people in the manor treat their guests. Furthermore, he explains that he walked all the way in the blistering cold and reiterates that he wants his dinner prepared at once. They're all looking down on me, everyone's looking down on me, even an old man like this, Hayes says inwardly as he trembles in anger. Then he grabs a vase and smashes it on the floor, telling Philip to act like a servant if he's one. It is at that moment that Hayes gets the greatest shock of his life. Philip turns to him with his tongue out like that of a snake, warning him to behave well while everyone's turning a blind eye. Frightened, Hayes falls to the ground and immediately recalls the farmer he met on his way home and what he said to him about no one ever going in that direction. He rises and dashes off, thinking about his sister and the fact that they have to get out of the castle. He walks by the rooms, searching for her, until he finally sees her sitting alone. But as he moves closer, he realizes she's with Lord Cloden, and he frowns at how close they've become. Just when he tries calling out her name, he coughs and notices that he can't use his voice. It's almost as if there's something choking him. All the while, Lord Cloden and his discussion about his late return went on without noticing his presence in the castle. A moment later, Ray asks the master, Clodan, if my brother's business fails and you lose your money because of it, you would end up hating me? He assures her that there's no need to worry about that. And when she inquires why, he clenches her body and replies that he always takes what's rightfully his. As Hayes watches this sight, still struggling to use his voice, it dawns on him that Lord Cloden never cared about his business in the first place. He was only after his sister, Ray. Subsequently, Ray rises and suggests it's time she headed back, and she requests that Lord Cloden teach her the rest of the book the next day, but he declines, saying he can't do it on that day. He reminds her about their custom of not coming out of their rooms on a designated day. Curiously, she asks whether the custom he's talking about is something they have to keep, no matter what, having heard it was an old tradition passed down. Being that everyone in the manor seemed to hate the custom, she asks what would happen if one didn't participate in it. But his response only sparks more curiosity. He replies that if he happens to visit her room that day, she shouldn't let him in, no matter what. But before she can even ask why, he shifts his attention to Hayes, who's still struggling on the ground. He springs up but can't move his body despite his sister's efforts to talk to him. Despite him, Lord Cloden holds Ray close while kissing her hand, then asks Hayes why he isn't answering his sister and even assumes he must be exhausted. The look on the master's face makes him realize he's the one responsible for his predicament, but because he can't move, all he can do is glare at his sister. From his glare, you could tell that he isn't fond of his sister being so close to Lord Cloden. She hurriedly dashes out of the room, leaving both guys there. After she's gone, the master snaps his fingers, more like releasing Hayes from the stiffness of his body, and then he inquires about the state of his business. The only thing Hayes keeps telling him is to let his sister go because whatever rift he has with him has to do with his business, and his sister has nothing to do with any of that. Where would she go? You're not planning on making her sleep on the streets, are you? Lord Cloden asks. Hayes replies that she has places to go. Besides, she's way past her marriageable age, and he plans to send her off somewhere next spring. Who are you going to send her to? The master asks with a very scary demon-looking gaze, but at this point, Hayes was already seriously trembling in fear. Meanwhile, Ray is in her room reminiscing on what happened earlier. She actually thought her brother was going to yell at her, but probably held himself back because he was standing before Lord Cloden. Little does she know that the situation was way beyond his control. Amid her musing, Lady Mary interrupts, reminding her that starting at midnight, she must not come out of her room till tomorrow evening. She breathes a sigh of relief on hearing that the master informed Ray about this custom himself, but Ray curiously asks if there's a problem. Lady Mary assures her that there's no problem and urges Ray to inform her the day after if there's anything she wishes to eat, because she doesn't want her wandering around looking for her. She exits the room after laying out all the instructions, but Ray can't help but think about how strange it is for everyone to act so mysteriously. The so-called customs of the castle, not being unable to step out of the room on a designated day, seem really strange because everyone kept saying different things about the reason behind it. However, on the said day, she doesn't hear any sweeping, and it's just as if everyone in the castle has disappeared. Not a single creature stirring, not even a mouse. The whole castle just fell dead silent. Even when she asked Lord Cloden earlier, she didn't seem to understand what he meant by his response. Nonetheless, she just assumes they're not telling her the truth because she's a guest, or maybe because they feel it's unnecessary to explain it to her, since it's a general rule of thumb. But except for this so-called custom, desserts that entice her taste buds, being able to learn how to read, and the person who looks at her as if she's the loveliest person in the world whenever they lock eyes, all make her happy. Just as she decides to stop thinking and go to sleep, there's a loud bang at her door, and her brother's voice screams her name to open it immediately. Her mind races with several thoughts. Why is he calling her at this hour? Did she do something wrong? Or is he trying to scold her for getting too close to the master? He continues banging on the door until she finally opens up, and then he walks in, crying bitterly. Worried, Ray asks what happened to him and what exactly is going on, but he grabs her, saying that there's no time for all the questioning and that they have to get out of the castle immediately. This statement sends chills down her body, leaving her confused, but her brother pulls her hand instead and runs out, still insisting there's no time. Still trying to comprehend the situation, Ray asks if he lost all of Lord Cloden's investments, but Lord Cloden replies that the money wasn't worth anything to begin with, so she should forget about it. Hearing this, she smacks his hand off hers and reminds him that the money is what it cost them to be here. Then she asks him again what he did with the money. Angered, Hayes slaps her and questions her audacity to speak to him in such a manner. Furthermore, he asks her if she honestly thinks that the master has feelings for her, and as if that's not enough torment, he reveals that the castle is the devil's den. He also adds that Lord Clodan is the master of all the monsters in the castle, and he's trying to swallow her up whole. It's obvious that no one in Ray's shoes would believe such a thing, and this makes her question if he's drunk or trying to run away, because he's afraid of taking the blame for failing his business again. To his surprise, she smacks his hand and insists that she's not going anywhere, but this only angers him further, and he curses at her. He tries to convince her that she's been completely fooled by him, but she still thinks that he needs to go and beg Lord Cloden for forgiveness. "Where do you even plan on going this time?" she asks, noting that there's no other place they can go to. She explains that she likes it in the castle and everyone's so nice to her, but Hayes interjects, saying that it's because they're all trying to eat her up. At this point, it becomes clear that nothing he says will get into her head, so he grabs her hand and runs towards the door, saying she's been bewitched and that she doesn't realize it. He says that he's her legal guardian when their parents aren't there, so she must do as he says. He also adds that this is their only chance to escape. Ray flounders while asserting that at least one of them should apologize, but just as her brother is about to respond, his eyes catch sight of a creepy figure. The strange thing is that when he asks about the person's identity, he discovers he's the only one who can see the person, and at that point, he decides to run away, leaving his sister behind. Ray flops to the ground, still trying to grasp what just happened, and if her brother really just ran away. Her thoughts? If Lord Cloden finds out about this, he's going to hate her and she doesn't want him to hate her. Somewhere at the back of her mind, she already knew this happiness was never bound to last. Her brother's business was never going to succeed unless some miracle happened, and the cold, harsh reality she desperately tried to ignore came at last. She just knew this happiness was never hers. As she sits on the floor lamenting, someone walks behind her and she immediately calls out her brother's name, thinking he has returned. But as she turns, she realizes it is Lord Cloden. With the way he's looking at her, she inwardly wonders if he already knows everything. Frightened, she asks him if he came to see her brother, then apologizes on his behalf and promises to repay what he owes by working in the castle. She also promises to be a good worker and to make money by doing whatever she can. She even hopes that her brother will come back eventually. To her surprise, Lord Cloden mentions that this is annoying because she keeps calling her brother's name. He even says that she's acting as if he's her husband or something. So he kneels and touches her chin, saying that no matter how much he tries to be nice to her, she's always talking about her brother. And now she won't stop calling his name, which makes him want to puke. In her musing, Ray acknowledges that she's never seen the master so angry before, so she starts apologizing for what her brother did, but Lord Cloden instructs her on how to stop mumbling. She continues apologizing and begging him not to be cold towards her, but he reminds her of his warning not to step outside her room. She apologizes again, but he reminds her to stop mumbling. And then he presses his finger on her tongue, saying that for every time she mumbles, he just gets this urge to shove his weenie deep down her throat. As if that's not enough, he grabs her by the hand and pushes her to the bed and begins kissing her. After they are done and Ray has fallen asleep, he looks at her and asserts that he can't let her go anymore. The next morning, Lady Mary is seen attending to Ray in the master's room when she tells him that he was too rough on the young girl. She says that Ray is a normal person and he shouldn't have gone that far. As she speaks, he tells her to take a look with her own eyes and asks if she can't see how poor Ray looks. He admits that it would be impossible to be gentle, and he doubts that Lady Mary herself will even be able to hold back if she were opportuned, but she still insists that he should leave Ray alone for a couple of months. In addition, she says she doesn't know whether the poor girl will be able to handle what's going to happen to her in the near future, but before she can finish, the master groans, causing her to shiver. Then she falls to the ground coughing and begging for forgiveness for a previous event. It seems as if she's been bound by a stronger demonic force controlled by Lord Cloden. She continues to plead as she trembles on the floor, but unknown to them, Ray had woken up and witnessed her pleading. She calls out the master's name and he quickly retreats from his axe and smirks at her. How can he be smiling in a situation like this? She thinks. Noticing her silence, he asks her what the problem is and leans toward her, but she turns away and mentions that Lady Mary was yelling just now. Angrily, he asks if she's avoiding him. She notices his gaze and quickly apologizes by saying that she didn't do that on purpose, just that she was startled, but he just stares at her without saying a word. Then he suddenly rises from the bed. He suggests that she eat first because she's been in bed all day, but Ray ponders the fact that he's acting as if Lady Mary isn't wallowing in pain. She finds it strange and more disturbing as she seems to be the only person who's confused by the situation. However, she insists that her meal isn't what's important at the moment, and they need to take care of Lady Mary first. But before she can turn to her direction, the cook is already on her feet. How is she up as if nothing happened when she was just on the ground earlier? Well, I guess that's what dark magic does. Surprised, she asks Lady Mary if she's okay, considering that she was just in pain, but she replies by saying that she acts that way sometimes, and there's no need to worry about her. This whole scene leaves Ray wondering whether she was imagining things, but Lord Cloden cuts in, suggesting he might just fire Lady Mary. According to him, seeing Ray defend her in such a manner makes him jealous, so she has to be mindful of the things she says in front of him. She questions his attitude toward her, but he clears the air by reiterating that he's talking about Lady Mary, not her. He further explains that the cook was already irritating him, but seeing how Ray can't stop talking about her makes him even angrier. They discuss for a while, and in summary, he urges her to give in, because if she can do that for him, they'll get along pretty well as lovers. Just as she's about to speak, she notices the sparkle of the piece of jewelry on her ankle, given to her by Lord Cloden. He reveals that he made it himself, and now she wishes she could do something for him too, but she has nothing. However, he reminds her that all she has to do is give in to him, and she readily agrees. This gesture of hers leaves him bewildered because he thinks that after making her go through all of that, she should slap him across the face, curse him out, and run away far away from the palace as fast as she can. Yet, she's embracing a vicious beast that's tearing into her flesh. He likes her, but can't help that it annoys him. We find out that a long time ago, Lord Cloden was cursed by his godfather to have eternal life and become a monster who couldn't escape the castle. The man who cursed him passed on right after saying those words. After that, Lord Cloden thought he'd be able to lift the curse in no time. But all his efforts proved it impossible. And now he's the only wizard left in the world. When he was little, his godfather revealed to him his secret of being the sole surviving wizard, but kept one thing back: his source of power. Turns out that the resources for this power were infinite, and once he found out about this, he wanted all the power to himself. No matter what he did, he couldn't seem to lift the curse, and his estrus cycle certainly made him feel like one. The curse affected those around him as well, and eventually consumed their lives. Now he can't even escape the castle, even if he wanted to run away. He's just like a beast on a leash. Presently, sitting in his room looking all gloomy, Philip inquires if his body is acting up again, but instead of answering the question, he asks about Ray. He learns that she's out on a picnic in the garden and suggests that Philip let her be, rather than bring her over. As Lady Mary attends to Ray during her picnic, she wishes that Lord Cloden could have joined them, but Lady shares that the master is awfully busy. As the lady quickly runs off to get more water, Ray comes across the gardener, and then she offers him some sandwiches. Later, the gardener goes to the basement where he meets Philip, who questions whether he's supposed to be in charge for the night and discharges him afterward. The gardener mutters a word, and this leaves Philip thinking because he hasn't heard the guy speak for the past 50 years. Apparently, the gardener has come to inform him that Ray requested blue roses, but Philip immediately warns him to be careful, lest he end up like Hayes, who will not live long. Fear grips Hayes as he hears this, so he starts pleading for them to let him see Lord Cloden. He also reveals that a ship will be coming into port soon, and if it does, he'll be able to pay back the money he owes. If that's too long a wait, he will borrow money. Philip bluntly tells him he can't pay back the money because no one will listen to him, looking the way he does. and then he hands him a mirror to look at his face. Hayes screams upon seeing what his face has turned into, saying they should change it back to how it was, but Philip notes that a curse can't be lifted once it's set. As Hayes continues to bluff, Philip shares that he's not exactly thrilled about having a new member, especially people like him who have no idea where they stand, and then he reveals his snake-like tongue. He explains that he's been taking care of the master since he was young and was devoted to him, but then this happened when he attempted to run away once. Fun fact, it's not just him. Everyone in the castle is in the same boat, and they all owe something to the master. So he advises him to give up trying to escape, else he'll turn into a complete monster if he sets foot outside the castle. Meanwhile, the gardener has come to seek the master's help in blooming a special flower, with the intention of repaying Ray with blue roses. Seeing the master's gestures, he quickly apologizes for probably asking for too much, but to his surprise, he agrees to the idea and hands him some potions. As he muses to himself, the master stares at him, fully aware that the reason behind his request is Ray. In another scene, Ray has just finished reading all the books she brought and starts thinking about Lord Cloden. She understands his busy schedule, but still, she hasn't seen him for days, and even though she wants to visit him, she doesn't want to be a bother. It suddenly starts raining again, so she moves toward the window to watch the rain, but her eyes catch sight of something, causing her to hurriedly run downstairs. She flaps open an umbrella and heads outside to take a closer look at the blue roses. She appears stunned at the sight of them because she always thought that blue roses didn't exist, just as her brother always said. While she continues to fantasize, the gardener walks right behind her, catching her off guard. Shocked, she lets go of the umbrella and falls to the ground, wondering if he heard her talking to herself. She quickly rises and says this is the first time she's heard him speak. Then he asks if she likes the flowers and reveals that they're a thank you for the sandwiches. Suddenly, Lady Mary screams her name, telling her to come inside because she's getting wet. But Ray thinks she might have misunderstood, so she promises the gardener she'll explain. She thanks him for showing her the flowers, then walks back inside and immediately explains to Lady Mary that she tripped by herself. Glaring back outside, the lady asks her if she's trying to send her to her grave. All the while, the master seems restless in his room. With memories of Ray in his mind, he even goes as far as sniffing the clothes she used in his room. On the other hand, while Ray takes a shower, she pauses to ask Lady Mary if she feels all better now. All better? The lady asks, confused. Then Ray mentions that she was sick not quite long ago and asks if she saw a doctor. Lady Mary waves it off, saying that it's nothing, so she doesn't need to worry about it. In a bid to help out, Ray asks if it's because there aren't any doctors nearby. She also suggests that the lady take a couple of days and go to the city, and then she even offers to ask Lord Cloden for a carriage. The lady replies that she barely even remembers the last time she went out. Then she begins asking questions that go back years. Ray even inwardly says that Lady Mary acts as if she's someone from the past. After the shower, the lady escorts her back to her room and leaves afterward. Just as Ray is about to go to bed, the master grabs her to the bed and asks why she's so late. Almost immediately, he falls asleep, leaving her to her thoughts. The next morning, he wakes up and stares at her while she's still asleep. She, on the other hand, is having a terrible dream about a snake that's just about to swallow her up whole. She tries to run away but falls down instead. Coincidentally, the snake in her dream has the same eyes as Lord Cloden. For a moment, it stops and glances at her, then twirls its tail around her and lifts her high up. After raising her so high up, it glares at her and releases her to the ground, and just at that moment, she springs up from the nightmare. What a strange dream, she says, panting. They talk for a while, then he grabs her, initiating an intimate moment. Their private moment lingers for a while. Later in the day, they're both seen in the garden on a picnic, but Ray doesn't look happy. She's still angry about how he forced himself on her yesterday despite all her efforts to stop him, but he blames her for exposing her body to him. As if that's not enough, he starts to caress her body again, but this time around she warns him to stop, or else she'll be mad at him. So he quits being nasty and offers to get her some food. This gesture leaves her staring at him for a moment, and when he catches her staring at him, she expresses that he's such a sweet person. She explains that she knows he hates the weather, yet he still came out for her sake. That's something nobody's ever done for her. She quickly recalls a childhood memory with her mom and mentions that she was taught not to bother people, yet he still does the things she likes even when he doesn't feel up for it. She asserts that it's the reason she likes him. Lord Cloden flinches upon hearing this, but Ray continues to ask if he has anything he hates, so she can bear it for him. To her surprise, he says that if she keeps doing things like this, she's going to spoil him. He always says mysterious things, so she tries to convince him that she means what she says. Anything? He asks, while holding her chin, but she takes his hand and kisses it, affirming that anything he says, she'll grant it. And he inwardly laments that whenever Ray becomes vulnerable in front of him and shows that she loves him, it feels like some part of his body is cracking in half. probably because they are so different. He only ever learned that victory could be achieved by stealing and claiming what's his. If only he could learn how to be vulnerable like her. Or if only he could have avoided that curse. Maybe he wouldn't have to feel this way. As this thought crosses his mind, his hand drops from her own, and then he takes a moment to think, did I just regret my past? He's never regretted anything in his life, even his course. He has only gotten mad about its inconvenience, but he has never regretted it. Then he recalls the curse again. The sound of birds flapping their wings draws him out of his musings, but then he suddenly starts looking unwell, causing Ray to inquire about his health. Before she can even finish asking her question, he begins caressing her body, saying that it's too late for him to become a good person now. He also adds that he'd rather turn her into someone just like him. Meanwhile, Hayes is still locked up in the basement, where Philip and Lady Mary are on their way to release him, but not to set him free. Rather, they say it's time for him to say his greetings. As they walk back into the castle, Hayes thinks to himself, saying that it's foolish of them because he can actually take them down now that his hands are free. He mentions that one is an old man and one is a middle-aged lady, so he can easily take both of them down. He asserts that he needs to get away because he can't just end his life here, and all he has to do is push them off the stairs. But just as he's about to do that, Lady Mary turns to inform him that henceforth his name will be John. He insists that his name is Hayes Lisbon, but she tells him that there's no one there with that name anymore. Then she gives him a piece of advice to try not to act all arrogant in front of the master, because if he does, he won't even be able to imagine what he will do to him. He yells for them to explain things to him to better understand, but they simply ignore him. Angered, he says that they are not even listening to him, and they are treating him as if he's some pile of garbage on the streets. But all the while, Lady Mary and Philip just stand by the corner whispering to themselves. Hayes considers escaping first while they are not paying attention, but then he suddenly overhears his sister's voice in the room, talking to Lord Cloten. He recognizes his sister's voice. Sharing a romantic moment with the master, he can't help but think that while he was locked up in the dungeon, she was busy fawning over the monster like a dog and even abandoning her own brother. He dashes into the room to confront her, but realizes a spell has been cast on him, and he can't seem to say what he has in mind. He keeps saying what the spell directs him to. It gets so bad when he realizes that his sister does not even recognize him. Why can't Ray recognize him? He asks himself. He admits he turned into a monster, but she's still supposed to recognize her sibling. Seeing all this, Philip steps in, apologizing on his behalf, and introduces him as John, a new servant to help with the chores around castle. It's okay. I was just startled. Nice to meet you, John, Ray says. As they trudge out of the room, Hayes reflects on the things Lady Mary said to him on their way there, which he took as a joke. He asserts that he needs Ray by his side to at least plan an escape because he can't give up easily. He's certain that even the most vicious snakes go into hibernation, and Lord Cloten is bound to have some weakness. He only needs to find the right timing. As the day continues, Ray takes a leisurely stroll through the castle and unexpectedly stumbles upon a childhood picture of Lord Cloten. He walks up to her to ask what she's staring at, and she replies that she's looking at his portrait, which is so cute. Then she poses a question. What kind of kid were you when you were you? She requests that he tell her about his childhood too. So, he begins the tale telling. His parents passed away in a carriage accident, and his professor, who took the initiative to become his godfather, was always an arm's length apart. His nanny took his side no matter what he's done, the people around him who turned a blind eye, and his so-called friend who always blabbered the same thing like a parrot. He couldn't stand them all. He tells her that he can't really remember the details, and all he remembers are the bad parts. He adds that there was not a single enjoyable thing about his childhood, so he doesn't know what to tell her. He brushes his hand against her cheek and says that there hasn't been a single boring moment ever since she came. Plus, she also lets him have her body. He grabs her and starts kissing her while she worries about someone seeing them in such a position. Just then, Lady Mary walks in and stumbles upon them smooching, causing her to drop the items in her hand. However, Lord Cloten notices this and uses his dark magic to keep the items afloat. Despite all that's going on without Ray's knowledge, he still assures her that there's no one around, while Lady Mary quietly picks up the tray hanging in the air and dashes off. This intimate moment lingers for a while, with them exploring various corners of the castle. After a while, she suddenly becomes thirsty and requests water. While she drinks the water, she overhears John's voice nagging from outside the room, and she inwardly notes that his attitude reminds her of someone, which is her brother Hayes. I guess she'll never find out that they're the same person. She wonders if her brother is doing well, as she's not even sure where he would be. She recalls that they were holding on to their last straw of hope, which was the letter about Elliot Wester. It seems just like yesterday that they barged into the castle with just a letter in their hands. Coming to the castle was her brother's idea, but now he's gone. And she and Lord Cloten are lovers. You never know what's going to happen." Then she turns to Lord Cloden and asks him how he knew their grandfather because he let them in when all they had was just a letter. "Why all these questions in a heated moment like this?" he asks. Along the way, he remembers the name Elliot Wester and how they met. It turns out that 50 years ago, the man walked into the castle on a rainy day, pleading to wait there until the rain stopped. After Lord Cloden took the man in that day, he invited him over for dinner. And while he sipped out of his drink, he noted that he had heard of the name Elliot Wester before. And for all he knew, he was from a noble family. He was as refreshing as the warm, sunny breeze in the spring, and his wife was pregnant with his baby. "I see that you are about to have a daughter," Lord Cloden said to him. Shocked, the man inquired how he knew about that, but the master quickly said that it was just his instincts. On hearing this, the man hoped he was right, because he had always wanted a daughter who resembled his wife, but Lord Cloden said he didn't think the man's wife would see the light of the world because she was sick. The man sprang up from his chair, shocked by the fact that the master had all this information. Just then, the master thought to strike a deal to help the man's wife give birth to his daughter without any trouble, and in return, he must send the daughter over to him once she's older. Terrified, the man rose from his seat and said that he was afraid the master was taking the joke way too far. But when he saw that there was no reason for a nobleman like him to make such ridiculous remarks, he fell back on his seat. Subsequently, he confessed that he hadn't come for the portrait. He had come because he had heard of a particular medicine for his sick wife. He gulped down his drink and asserted that as long as his daughter was born healthy with all 10 fingers, nothing else mattered, and if the master was willing to offer his help, then there was no reason for him to decline. Elliot Wester was the first person to make it out alive of the manor, and his life back home was nothing less than perfect. His daughter grew up happy and healthy, just like he had always hoped. He was a man who had it all until the promises that he had made crept up to him, and the curse was passed down from generation to generation until it finally reached Ray. At the present time, after Ray has fallen asleep, the master asserts that it's of no use, and all he knows is how to take what's his. That's precisely why she's in his arms right now. The next day, Lady Mary is in the kitchen lost in her thoughts. She can't stop thinking about the situation she saw the master in the day before, because she never would have expected him to do such a thing in the corridor. Soon after, Ray abruptly disrupts her musings with her presence, prompting her to question whether Ray should be with Master Cloden at this hour. She questions her presence there, and Ray responds by saying she has a question but doesn't know who to ask. When Lady Mary asks what the question is, she whispers that she's wondering if lovers make out as often as they can, because what she's experiencing is nothing like what she expected. After hearing her question, Lady Mary inwardly says that it's normal for someone like Ray to expect something, but what she's saying is mere fantasy for someone like the master. So, she goes ahead to explain that it's normal during the first few months of marriage, especially when you are deeply in love with someone. She adds that Master Cloden may be a little overboard, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. Furthermore, she tells Ray to suggest to Master Cloden that she get a new pair of shoes. One thing Lady Mary knows for sure is that as long as the master has Ray by the neck, her normal life is over. It's already scary that his obsession with her is getting worse every day. If she ever breaks up with him, he's going to throw quite the fit, and if she ever leaves, the servants will be the ones to take the blow. Ray basically has the key to everything now, and if anything goes wrong with her, the outcome will be unimaginable. In the next scene, Lady Mary approaches Philip to inquire about the master's whereabouts, and after he directs her to his study, she reveals that there's something she wants to tell him, then walks away. She thought about this all night and decided that before Ray runs away, and before the servants take the blow for all the aftermath, she must interfere when she can. She says that if they could have some peace in the manor, it would be worth something. But is this the right thing to do? She asks herself as she walks towards Lord Cloden's room. She enters the room and sees Ray fast asleep on his body. Then she shares that the young lady only has one pair of shoes, so she thought it would be nice to get her a new pair. In his musings, Lord Cloden urges Lady Mary to keep doing what she's doing and listen to all of Ray's silly ramblings. Also, she should make her talk about her concerns and feelings, because she should at least have someone to lean on when her only brother disappears. Just as Lady Mary is about to leave the room, the master orders her to inform Philip to get the carriage ready. Later that day, as Ray wakes up, Lady Mary urges her to get dressed immediately. After that, she grooms her hair, and all these preparations make Ray question if they're having a guest today. Really? Why would anyone visit this god-forbidden place? Anyway, the servant replies by sharing that she will be going outside today, or rather, she'll be going into town with the master. Ray can't contain her excitement after hearing this news, but her mind soon shifts to her brother. She asks if Lady Mary has heard from him, but she denies it and continues brushing her hair. After Ray is all done preparing, she rushes to meet Lord Cloden. By then, the carriage is ready, and the master is all handsomely dressed, waiting for her. As soon as she sees him standing outside, she runs to give him a hug, and he can instantly feel her excitement. Meanwhile, Philip is by the corner ordering John to tie the horse to the carriage, but he grumbles and replies that he doesn't know how to do it. They argue for a bit, catching Ray's attention, and she inwardly remarks that John talks just like her brother, and she's never met anyone who talks that way other than Hayes. After everything is set, they hop on the carriage and embark on the journey, but John signals her through the window, pointing toward a certain direction. She notices that he's pointing at a place where all the woodpiles are and wonders if he's asking her to meet him up there and why. During the journey, something strange catches her attention, so she curiously asks Lord Cloden, who's driving the carriage. And he replies that the horse has been specially trained, but unknown to Ray, the carriage is being controlled by his dark magic. Then she asks where they are headed, and he reveals they're going to get her a new pair of shoes. Seeing her mood, he takes her hand and assures her that the reason is not that he's embarrassed by her shoes, but that he just wants to buy her a new pair. She admits she knows this, but is sad because she never gives him anything. All she does is take from him. She shares that, no matter how badly she wants to return his love, she has nothing to offer, which makes her sad. "Don't say that," he says, squeezing her hand. He adds that the fact she's saying this makes it sound as if she's by his side because she's indebted to him. He explains that he knew Hayes would never be able to pay back the money from the start, and he only helped him with his business because he wanted to leave a good impression on her. He teases her and says that money isn't what's important to him after all. It all worked out in the end, and you can tell by the way she's sitting on top of him. As they arrive at their destination, Ray stomps out of the carriage, frowning, but Lord Cloden suggests they take their time to look around since she wanted to come out. "Would you grant me the honor of escorting you, milady?" he asks, taking her hand. A few hours later, while they are still out in town, they take a break to munch on some food while Ray expresses her gratitude for all he's gotten for her already, although she thinks it's a bit too much. However, he bluntly says it's not enough, and that's what he does for someone he likes. She looks at him, taken aback, and suggests they head back home after they finish their meal, but he insists that they still have one more stop left. He teases her further, and before Ray knows it, she finds herself in an inn and can't help but ask when you had time to look for a place like this. For Ray, love is a feeling she's only ever heard about from others, but she never imagined it would be this overwhelming. Their intimate moment lingers for a while. Much later, Lord Cloden wakes up first and watches Ray while she sleeps. He hopes their children will have her hair. Does it sound ridiculous? A father who can't even take a walk out in the park because of his curse? He wonders how long it will take for her to realize the truth. Later at night, as Philip and Lady Mary watch the Master return in his carriage, Philip remarks on the fact that he's seen the Master using magic for a long time, but never has he seen him use this much magic for an extended period. He can't help but wonder if it's taking a toll on his body. Lord Cloden gets down from the carriage, holding Ray in his arms while she's asleep. He takes her to the bedroom and undresses her himself, despite all Lady Mary's attempts to help. Just as she's about to leave the room, the Master makes a statement, wishing he could be normal. He mentions that he has never had this kind of regret before, and now he's stuck thinking about a way to lift the curse. Lady Mary remarks that breaking free from the curse has always been a wish that everyone in the manor has dreamt of. For many years, the Master had been looking for ways to lift his curse, but eventually he gave up. And since then, he'd only go into the lab to make painkillers. Now he's back to trying again, even when he knows very well that it's impossible. The next day, Lady Mary prepares Ray's outfit for the day while Ray reminisces about the retreat she had with Lord Cloden. He was busy again at work, and she returned to her normal day-to-day routine. If there's anything that's changed, it's the fact that Lord Cloden's gifts have been delivered to her door every day. One thing is certain, the Master sure has good taste. Ray stares at the dresses with a long face, not because she doesn't like them, but because she thinks that all the dresses probably cost more than the amount of debt her brother owes Lord Cloden. But Lady Mary tries to assure her that she's worried over nothing because the Master would get an entire dress shop if she wanted. She remarks that this only means that Lord Cloden likes her, and other ladies would be jealous of her. Suddenly, Ray asks about the Master's whereabouts and mentions that she hasn't seen him in days. Apparently, that's what all the dress-up is for, to meet him during his afternoon snack. Subsequently, Ray goes to him with some snacks, asking if he's okay after she hears a strange noise coming from his room. She notices his bleeding hand, but he assures her that it's nothing and asks why she's there. She replies by saying that she brought him something to eat, and then she suggests that they get his hand treated, but he insists that he's busy at the moment. However, she still insists on going into his room, but he warns that it's dangerous because of the broken glass, so she should go back. Angered, she smacks his hand and begins shouting, asking if he's hiding something. But amid the heated moment, the plate of food she was holding falls to the ground and shatters. With a deep sigh, she bends down to pick it up while asking herself what she just did. She quickly apologizes, saying she didn't mean to be a burden or annoy him. She assumes he must be busy and suggests he should get back to what he was doing. Grabbing her, he says, "I never said you were an annoyance. Don't ever say that again." With no idea what to do, she glances at him, announcing her intention to leave. But then he's forced to ask if she's running away from him. Running away? I'm going to ask the housekeepers to sweep the broken glass, she replies. He then asserts that he doesn't care if she raises her voice at him or gets mad at him, but when she tries to get away from him, it drives him crazy. He reveals that his head feels like it's about to explode, and he's well known for his temper, especially when he's working, which is why no one comes near him when he works. He curses himself and asks her for forgiveness, but Ray thinks otherwise. She starts explaining that he can be the sweetest person on earth, always encourages her to do her best, and has no idea how much it helps her. But he responds by saying it's because he likes her. Surprised, she asks if this means that it's possible he won't like her, but he replies by saying she should be more worried about him falling for her even harder. While he speaks to her, he notices she's acting a bit strangely today, but when she tries to explain, she accidentally touches his injured hand, prompting him to ask to be treated by her. As she begins treating him, he just stares at her, compliments how beautiful she looks, and asks if she dressed up just for him, but she ignores him and turns away. Seeing her in this mood, he explains that just like how she wants to be beautiful in front of him, there's a side of him he doesn't want to show her. However, she's scared that he might change and end up not liking her anymore, but he assures her that such a thing will never happen. Instead, he should be the one asking her not to change. Ray shares that her love was always one-sided, and she thought it'd be that way for the rest of her life. But to her surprise, he liked her back for the first time. This has never happened to her before. So why would she ever change? She asks. He hugs her and inwardly remarks that this feels like a curse that he never wants to break free from. On a beautiful sunny afternoon, Ray wanders in the garden, admiring the blue roses, which appear particularly big, while also searching for the gardener. Suddenly, she hears a rustling sound behind the flowers and is glad, thinking she has found the gardener. As she steps closer, she realizes it is John, and he addresses her by her last name, even though everyone else calls her Ray. She greets him, but he starts rambling, saying that normal people aren't able to grow such flowers. While crushing the flowers, he says that blue roses don't exist, and that maybe only a monster could make something like this. Amid his rambling, he feels a smack on his head with a stick, but before he can know what's happening, Jack, the gardener, pushes him to the ground and starts punching him despite all Ray's efforts to stop him. While beating John up, he wonders if Ray has already found out the truth from what he said earlier. Even though John is being beaten up, he still goes on bluffing, claiming that he knows the kind of tricks the gardener is playing. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Philip has just gone to give the master his medicine. We learn that the side effects of Master Cloden's curse get stronger when it's a full moon, but this time around it's happening too soon, and it's not even a full moon yet. Philip thinks that it's probably because he used too much magic. However, he's glad they have the medicine to ease his temper. Philip awkwardly remarks that the master probably made the medicine because of Ray, and if it weren't for her, there would have already been blood in the manor. All of a sudden, the master throws a key to him, instructing him to keep it somewhere safe. He explains that if you lock the door with the key, someone inside can come out, but no one outside can enter the room, and by doing so, it will keep Ray safe. He continues giving Philip instructions concerning the key when Lady Mary suddenly knocks at the door, drawing his attention to what's going on in the garden. As they all rush to the garden, he questions if she got into a fight, but she replies by saying that Mr. Jack, the gardener, stopped before it got too serious. Curiously, he asks why she was with the two servants, and she says that she wanted to help since everyone is always busy, so she came out. On hearing this, he grabs her hand, telling her she doesn't need to do that, and that he doesn't want her to ever touch dirt. And if she does, he'll cut off the gardener's wrist. He adds that she doesn't have to do anything because, just like he already told her, he only wants to give her the best of everything. This is quite a princess treatment, I must say. But then, what if he doesn't love her anymore? Would he still say the same thing? He promised her he would never change, but she doesn't know where she stands, and she needs some kind of connection so she can stay there, even if his feelings change. He catches her off guard, lost in her musings, so she immediately confesses that she was outside so she could look at the flowers, and she just happened to run into the servants. "Were you looking at the flowers without me?" he asks, but this question comes as a shock to Philip and Lady Mary, as their master has never liked or enjoyed doing such things. As Lord Cloden and Ray walk back inside, he orders Philip and Lady Mary to make sure that John and Jack get proper training. Although we all know that it is that time of the year when the curse gets stronger and that the medicine only helps him to ease his temper, it was expected that the master at least rip off John's tongue or make the gardener go blind. It's a relief to Philip that the master at least found his composure, while Lady Mary acknowledges that their life depends on Ray now. But what if she ever changes her mind and runs away? What will happen then? Philip, however, believes that it's a pointless presumption, and all they have to do is do their jobs right. Then he turns toward John, who's still trying to defend his actions. Philip sternly gazes at him, warning him to know his place and adding that they only turned a blind eye because he was a guest from a wealthy household. But there won't be any of that from now on. During Lord Cloden's meal, he begins to have wild imaginings about himself and Ray, but he soon snaps out of it when she draws his attention, asking if he's okay. She notices him sweating and reaches for his face. Then she rises from her seat and heads to the kitchen for water and a towel to help with his fever. Meanwhile, all he wants is for her to run away from him. He remarks that he needs to call Lady Mary, then hide until tomorrow to keep Ray safe and to make sure the servant prepares everything she needs. To his surprise, she returns with the water and towel and starts pressing his body, suggesting that they call a doctor. But he flops on her body, expressing his feeling of nausea and thirst. "If only I could take just a tiny sip, then maybe I'll feel all better," he says, holding her closely. "You are sick right now. Calm down," she says. But he teases her by saying he meant that he wanted a sip of ice-cold water. After teasing her for a while, he orders her to go back to her room and not come out until the next day because of the customs of the manor. So, she mumbles and asks if this means that she won't be able to see him tonight, but he gives her no response. Then she suggests they spend the night together, but before she can finish, he calls on Philip and Lady Mary to take her back to her room. Just before she leaves, he calls her back and says that if he happens to visit her bedroom tonight, she should not open the door, no matter what. Confused, she asks what he means, but he makes a promise to her instead of answering. He promises to take her somewhere fun if she can keep her promise not to open her door for him. As Lord Cloden steps back into his room, he falls to the ground, coughing out blood due to the intensity of the curse. Meanwhile, as Ray is being escorted, she can't stop thinking about the strange favor the Master requested of her. But Lady Mary reassures her that it's because the Master has a plan. Being that the Master is very fond of her and is doing all this for her sake, they urge her to abide by his wish. So she reluctantly walks into her room, and then Philip locks the door with the key Lord Cloden gave him earlier. He hopes everything goes smoothly this time around. Within the confines of the room, Ray thinks to herself, "It's not unusual for Lord Cloden to be acting so secretive, but to make a promise like that is quite fishy. Plus, he looked sick. She can't wait for all this to be over." Meanwhile, Philip and Lady Mary can't seem to find the Master anywhere in the castle. Lady Mary starts to imagine the worst that could happen if he had gone to Ray's room, but Philip exhales and reminds her that the Master said he'd prepared a strong spell and would be able to protect Ray no matter what. It's a relief hearing this, but Lady Mary insists they check Ray's room just in case. It's true that when a starving beast is hindered with food right in front of its nose, no one is going to be able to take the wrath. On the other hand, Ray has just woken up from a nightmare, so she decides to drink some water. Just as she pours the water, there's a knock on the door, and it's Lord Cloden. He asks if she isn't sleeping yet, and she replies by saying that she just woke up and will be going back to sleep. He continues banging on the door and says he just wants to see her face, but she reminds him of his explicit warning not to open the door, even if he comes by tonight. Hearing this, he makes several promises to sing her a lullaby and to pillow her head with his arm. All the drama keeps Ray wondering whether his promise was a joke, but he continues to plead to just see her before going to bed. With fierce determination, she tells him that she wants to keep their promise, but this only escalates the situation. He slams on the door harder, insisting that she open the door, and even goes as far as asking if she's with someone else in the room. He even accuses her of hanging around with the gardener. His behavior seems strange tonight because, although he has played jokes on her before, he's never been this scary. After a while of trying to open the door, he finally accepts that Ray has won this time around, but it doesn't end there. He makes another offer to take her to see the ocean and also asks why she's so cold to him that she's not even opening the door for him. "Maybe this is just how you feel about me," he says. Meanwhile, Ray is more concerned and scared of all the thunderstorms. By the time she speaks to him again, she notices how everything has suddenly become silent as if he's left her doorpost. She tries to put the pieces together to understand what's going on, and then she starts crying and explaining that there's a misunderstanding. She expresses her love for him, but before she knows what's going on, he grabs her from behind and says, "I guess God didn't completely abandon me after all, he gave me you." Upon seeing him, she is happy to know that he hasn't left yet. However, she looks up and realizes that she's no longer in her room, but rather by the ocean. "How is this even possible?" she asks. Before she can wrap her head around the situation, Lord Cloden initiates an intimate moment. After using his dark magic to take them back to the castle, Ray orders him to leave her room, and when he asks her why she's pushing him away, she replies that he's not the Cloden she knows at the moment. Then he reminds her of the saying that a dog never pulls out, even after they're done. The next morning, Lord Cloden wakes up, wondering how he got back to his room after sending Ray back. He springs up from the bed after finding her by his side, then recalls what happened last night, and he appears to regret his actions. Meanwhile, Ray is still fast asleep, dreaming when she feels a warm touch on her head, only to wake up and see Lord Cloden. She soon realizes she's not undressed, and her clothes feel soft, which makes her question where they are. She knew everything seemed strange from the beginning, and then she asked why he told her not to come out and why they were by the ocean. She's certain that she didn't step foot outside her room, and that's all the more reason everything is so confusing. He just stares at her without saying a word, and before you know it, he holds her close, attempting to kiss her. But she covers his mouth. To his surprise, she asks if he's a fairy, which makes him recall that he's still in heat and has to keep his distance from her. His situation isn't something that simply spending a night with her can solve, and he considers himself an animal who can't even control his intimate desires. He diverts the topic by reminding her that she was talking about how hungry she was in her sleep. Then he urges her to eat something. Surprisingly, she says, "You already know everything, Cloden. I love you." She complains bitterly, saying that he made her love him, yet she's the one who barely knows anything about him out of everyone in the manor. She hugs him from behind and says he's the one who tricked her into opening the door for him, yet he never tells her anything. He just holds her hand, instructing her to let go. She yells that they are lovers, which simply means that she should know more about him, but all the while he's just busy thinking of ways to devour her. Seeing him react this way, Ray professes her hatred for him and adds that she doesn't want to be his lover anymore. In response, he only says she should suit herself. But after hearing this, Ray begins to cry, realizing he's not even afraid to lose her. Little does she know that it's the curse making him act so strangely toward her. Although he's trying so hard to be careful, if he doesn't watch himself, he can tear her apart limb by limb. Crying, she asks him what she is to him and whether she's someone he doesn't have to share anything with, but he responds by yelling for her to stop talking before he kisses her. "Is that all you have to say to me?" she asks, but yet again, he has no reply for her. With a sad face, she walks back to the bed, declaring her hate for the environment. Back at the castle, Lady Mary is seen carrying food to Ray's room, but as she climbs the stairs, she notices that all the windows in the hall are open. It occurs to her that this is Ray's floor, and her greatest fear might have just come to pass. She quickly runs to Philip, who's outside with John, to report that Ray isn't in her room and all the windows in the hallway are shattered. She screams, saying that Master has done it again, just like the last time. Upon hearing this, John asks her what she means and if she's talking about his sister. Furiously, he asks if the Master did something to his sister or if he's trying to make a monster out of her as well. But Lady Mary shuts him up. Still, he insists that they would rather take the lives of himself and his sister instead of making them more miserable than they already are. Lady Mary laughs and asks him if that's why he tried to run away and leave his precious sister behind, but he denies it and says he was going to come back for his sister as soon as he found someone who could help them. So she reveals her monster tongue and asks him what he would have done if Ray became a monster while he was gone. They continue to exchange words until Philip stops them. "This isn't the time to quarrel," he says, while letting out a deep sigh. Just at that moment, Ray and Lord Cloden walk back into the castle, and Ray mentions that she's tired and will be in her room. The servants, unable to comprehend what's going on, just stare at her.